rescued from a safe hidden within a Russian palace and smuggled across Europe at times in a hat and damaged upon arrival to England. That is the story behind today's tiara, the Grand Duchess Vladimir Tiara, which is one of the most iconic pieces within the British collections. It has diamonds, it has emeralds, and it has pearls. And this piece, I think, really captures the imagination because of its connections to Russia and post-revolution period. Because as we know, all of the jewelry collected by the czars over the years, which actually put out on a table and most of it was sold. We don't know what happened to the vast majority of these gorgeous pieces we see on the table. But as it happens, Grand Duchess Vladimir, she was actually the aunt to Tsar Nicholas II, actually was able to secure all of her jewelry because as it happened to be, looters did not find her safe in her bedroom. And so we are going to track the journey of this particular tiara today. But if you guys haven't been to Tiara Tuesday, my name is Brittany and I would love to have you back. If you love all things that glitter, you will love this channel. And it would be great to get Royal Fashion News to 100,000 subscribers at least this year. So feel free to hit that subscribe button. And this tiara, when I was looking through the history, has kind of a mixed history in some ways, because what I happen to find when it comes to royal jewelry is that the history is not as clear. There seems to be sometimes a more fluid tie to the past in some ways, because when it comes to jewelry, it's a very personal piece of property. Unless it's, let's say, the crown jewels, other jewels are usually personal. And so sometimes there's different stories attached to it that I've found through doing these videos, because I have different books. Some of them are older, some of them are newer, and they just have different tidbits of the story. And this one is one that reflects that, because as I was looking particularly at the flight out of Russia, I got a little bit different viewpoints depending on which source I looked at. But regardless of how exactly it was smuggled out of Russia, it did happen, and so that's what we will focus on, but just a little bit of history. So this tiara was owned by Grand Duchess Vladimir Alexandrovich of Russia, and she obviously was married to the Grand Duke Vladimir Alexandrovich of Russia. And so his brother was, I believe, Tsar Alexander, and his nephew was, of course, Tsar Nicholas II, who ended up being assassinated with his family. And so his wife, though, Duchess Marie of Mecklenburg-Schwerin, became his wife in 1874. And apparently this tiara was commissioned from Russian jeweler Bolin in 1890. And as it happened to be, because Nicholas's wife, Tsarina Alexandra, she wasn't much into the social aspect of the court. It was actually really the Vladimir Palace, that is what it was called, which still exists today. The Vladimir Palace with the Grand Duke and Duchess Vladimir was where all the social happenings went on. So this tiara was worn by her quite frequently. And apparently, and this is from the Queen's Jewels, which is by Leslie Field. It's a book from the 80s. It's actually one I found in my library years ago. And so I made sure to get it when I started this channel, just so I could reference it. And this is where some of the story differs from, for example, the newer book, The Queen's Diamonds. And so according to that book, Grand Duchess Vladimir was very close to Cartier, and so she had actually left this tiara in Paris with Cartier for cleaning, and they apparently made 3 copies of it. I don't know if that's what's true, but that's what Leslie Field wrote. So that's just an interesting thing to consider here. And then when it came, obviously, to the time of the revolution, obviously Grand Duchess Vladimir fled to the Caucasus because we had all this stuff going on. She was still sort of waiting, and I think hoping, obviously, the Tsar would be restored or that order would be restored. Unfortunately, the Bolsheviks prevailed, and so she ended up having to flee out of that region. And she had some of her jewelry with her, but not all of it. In fact, some of it was hidden in a safe in her home, in her bedroom, apparently. And so she commissioned her friend Albert Stopford, who was a British antiques and art dealer who specialized in Fabergé and Cartier items. She asked him to remove 224 jewels from her safe. And I believe I got this story, part of the story, from Tatler, if I remember correctly. So again, different sides of the story here. It gets a little bit interesting. And so he was commissioned to basically go into her bedroom, grab these jewels, and take them back. And Leslie Field, I feel like, definitely has the most interesting rendition of this story, because apparently, and this is according to Countess Airlie, who was one of Queen Mary's ladies-in-waiting and close confidants, quote, Stopford actually disguised himself as an old woman and hid this tiara in the lining of his black bonnet, cramming the 15 pearl drops into cherries that were sewn on as trimmings. Whether this part of the story is true or not, most certainly Stopford managed to get the jewels out of Russia, possibly using diplomatic channels to do so. Unquote. And so there's also a version as well where one of her sons was also part of this endeavor and they disguised themselves as workers. So we have a couple of variations of this story. But anyways, he had to disguise himself some way. That a house had apparently, or the palace, had already been looted. It was actually one of the last built in St. Petersburg. It's on the water. So they managed to get this piece out and put them in Gladstone bags, which is a small portmanteau suitcase built over a rigid frame, according to Wikipedia. And so they put the jewels in this bag and then were able to smuggle it to England, where everything was immediately put in safety deposit boxes. And then the Grand Duchess made her escape out of the Caucasus shortly after. But unfortunately, the tiara was damaged in transit. Some of the pearls were missing and the diamonds were damaged. And so after the Grand Duchess's death in 1920, her children, which included Princess Nicholas of Greece, who is the mother of Marina, who became the Duchess of Kent, so the mother of the current Duke of Kent, she had to sell these jewels. And according to one report as well, they were kind of divvied up between the 4 siblings, and Princess Nicholas ended up with this particular tiara. And so she decided to sell it to our favorite tiara connoisseur, Queen Mary. And so Queen Mary sent it to Garrard's to get adjusted and to get the jewels replaced. And then a couple of years after this change happened, she brought it in and she had the Cambridge emeralds added. So these Cambridge emeralds were originally part of the Delhi Durbar tiara. And so they were on the top, so she took some of those and she changed up the tiara so the pearls and the emeralds could be switched out as needed or as desired. And you can also wear it the way they call widowed, which means that those particular jewels are taken out and it's just the diamond frame. And so according to Hugh Roberts, who wrote The Queen's Diamonds, the intersecting brilliant set circles of the frame are hung with 15 large claw-set pendant pearls, which can be replaced with emerald drops. And obviously in 1953, once Elizabeth became queen, she inherited this particular tiara from her grandmother. By 1988 though, apparently the tiara had some issues, so they actually had to completely remake the frame. So the frame on it right now is not the original one at all. It has been completely remade. It'll be interesting to see if maybe Camilla needs it to be remade, depending on how flexible the tiara is, can indicate its comfort level. And obviously as well, those emeralds are very big. The pearls are very big as well. And so this tiara, I imagine, is quite heavy. And you had the additional movement. And obviously we did have Princess Diana, who said that she didn't particularly like the movement of the Queen Mary's Lover's Knot tiara and how the pearls moved. It doesn't seem to bother Catherine because that is her go-to tiara, but everybody has their own level of comfort, and apparently that was something Diana didn't like. The Queen, though, was very fond of this tiara. She wore it quite frequently, and it was a part of a display as well. And I will have to say, I do think this tiara is utterly stunning. I feel like it's also very unique. I don't feel like we see a ton of this style, even though allegedly, apparently 3 different copies exist. I've never seen them. I did a brief Google search, didn't really come up with anything except for the people who were copying the tiara. But I don't really feel like, again, we see this tiara very much. Some of the designs with the circlet we do from time to time. But again, something that hangs within the tiara is a bit rarer from what I've seen in all the tiaras that we currently have in Europe. Basically, all the pieces are stable, but the addition of being able to switch out the jewels makes this tiara very, very versatile. And of course, if you don't want the weight of the additional jewelry, you can always take them out, which obviously the tiara as well is still gorgeous without those. And I've included some pictures here from Hugo's book. So I actually took these with my iPhone from the book, but you get the sense of the detail, especially with the claws that hold the pearls. You can see, I feel like their age very clearly, that they're very old. And that's why, again, I love tiaras and I love doing these videos because it's an outlook and a look into the past, because these jewelry pieces, not only are they valuable, because people sometimes put way too much focus on that. It's about the history behind them, the women who have worn it. And someday soon, we may see Camilla bust out this particular piece. It'll be interesting to know if she wears it widowed or with the emeralds or the pearls. If you have a guess, let me know. I think the emeralds as well are just gorgeous pieces of emeralds. Emeralds are actually some of the most expensive gemstones you can own. They are very, very pricey because they don't have that many of them, and they are also very prone to being scratched and damaged. They are more fragile than diamonds, and so I think this particular piece is one that I definitely and so many people gravitate towards. And there has been a rumor that Meghan Markle wanted this particular tiara, because there has always been this rumor around that Meghan wanted an emerald tiara. And I am of the opinion, if she had wanted this particular tiara, that she would have had to go and grab a book and look through and find the one she liked and say, I want this one. But of course, that's not how it works at all. And I imagine if she wanted an emerald tiara and she was given options, I'm sure the tiara Eugenie wore was one that was presented as an option to her. And if this rumor is true, and of course, we can all guess whether or not it is, I think if Meghan decided at first she wanted the emerald tiara, but Eugenie was then given her options, and Eugenie was like, well, I want the emerald tiara. In royal families, blood does rule. So if Eugenie, the blood princess, said she wanted that particular tiara, Meghan had to go with her second choice. That's my just particular thought process if she did actually want an emerald tiara, because we've heard as well that maybe she originally wanted her engagement ring to be an emerald. And again, I don't think she particularly likes her engagement ring because she doesn't wear it anymore. And she had it completely remade as well. So anyways, guys, such an interesting history here. And I really would love to do a story one time on the missing Russian jewels, because we do have some of them. But again, jewelry history is just kind of hard to track sometimes because of the personal nature of it, because of selling and confidential sales. Like, you think something doesn't exist and all of a sudden somebody pops up in it and you're like, wait, I thought that particular tiara had been sold. As it turns out, it was just sitting in a vault for years on end, or maybe privately purchased, what have you. So this just makes it though so interesting. So guys, let me know what you think of this video. Let me know what you think of this particular tiara. Is it one of your favorites? I believe it was one of our more popular tiara options in our poll we did a couple months ago. So again, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye.
We don't count the carats, we count the centuries.